Good morning, everybody. Out on another scouting mission today. I am in western Wisconsin actually today, which kind of like comprises of essentially Buffalo County down to like the Platteville or Dubuque area, somewhere in that range. Don't want to give you exactly where I am, but there's a couple reasons I picked this area. And the biggest one is like western Wisconsin, if you didn't know, essentially has like no mosquitoes, which is really nice because I hunt a big swamp and like there's just tons of mosquitoes in there. So early season and stuff, I want to sneak over here, and that's my goal today, is to find some early season spots in this area. The reason they don't have mosquitoes is because there's not a lot of like low-lying marsh. It's all hills and valleys and streams and running water, and mosquitoes need like stagnant water to breed really and get good numbers, which is another reason why I'm out of breath. I just had to walk up this big hill. The other reason I picked this area is because A, you got to cross a river to get here. B, there's lots of big hills, so it starts putting human barriers in the way. And C, it's actually pretty big, so I can go for about 1.5 miles before, like 1.5 miles to 2 miles before I hit the boundary. So that gives me a lot of opportunity for other hunters to come in, pick spots before they get to where I want to go. So when I'm scouting this piece, first thing I did was sat down, looked at onX Maps. From there, I come out here and I start with the farthest point first, where I think the best opportunity is, and so that's where I'm headed now. Once I get to that farthest point, I work my way back. I know a lot of people like start out and they're like, ooh, look at that sign, and that's me too, like, oh, look at that rub, ooh, look at that rub, oh, there's a scrape, and you just kind of like get on this trail and you get off course. Then you come back in the fall and you're like, oh man, I only scouted like, you know, the first 1/4 mile of this piece, not back where I wanted to go. Now I got to go in blind into those areas and stuff like that. So my strategy has been just go as deep as I can to start out, and then I'll work my way back. Because most likely, like all these scrapes and rubs that I'm seeing that are closer to the parking area, other people are hunting them, or they're only nocturnal, or they're small bucks, or, you know, usually it just doesn't work out that the biggest buck is sitting, you know, right next to the parking lot. It does happen, don't get me wrong, but it's just usually. So I'm heading, like I said, all the way back, then working my way out, and just kind of giving you guys my scouting process along the way. And because I have a targeted time frame in mind, I know I want to hunt early season, which in Wisconsin is like mid to late September, early October. I'm going to be targeting food sources because that's how you hunt the deer in that time frame. So for me, there's going to be ag fields out here. I'm going to look at those for sure, mark those up. But the big one for me is going to be acorns and like apple trees if I can find them. Those natural food sources to me seem to be more productive than ag fields and open areas that are man-made. And that's a lot to do with like seclusion. Big deer, a lot of deer in general just like to be more secluded than not. So a big ag field, odds are they're not going out there in daylight hours, especially on public land. Does happen, don't get me wrong, but odds say that they're not going to do that. But the odds do say that if they are going to feed, and they're going to feed somewhere, it's going to be in a secluded area, which typically runs acorns and apple trees. So that's kind of my general take on it. So heading way back, got some big ridges to go through, some saddles, some points, things like that. And hopefully I'm going to find some oak flats, which is where I'm going to drop my pins, and then hopefully come back, plan a wind, and get a kill back here in the fall. So we'll see how it goes. I don't know, it's looking pretty good so far. Nice stuff. Here is a premium trail crossing. Check this out. Going right down that big chute there, over here, and up this hill. So regardless of the age of the rub, I really like to find them and just understand where they are, because from like, you can find an area with 10-15 rubs in it and they're all old, none of them are really that fresh, but there's only 10-15 trees in that area. That tells me that deer use that area every single year. Come through there, they rub them up and they keep going. So it tells me that they're using this trail, they're using this area, and bucks are here. So just give me, there's a fresh one. So I've never been here before, and looking on the maps, this stuff is untouched from satellite maps. And obviously the DNR has been in here cleaning out a ton of these trees, making some new trails, which in the fall is going to provide easier access for people, and also kind of throws me off because I thought this was, you know, a nice secluded area, an area that I could really get after. But clearly they're putting a road in here so that people can just kind of walk their way right up in here. So the deer are obviously using this road right now. I don't think that's like a lifetime thing. I think that's just, you know, it's spring, no one's hunting them, the road's new, they're just kind of being curious, checking it out. There's no real pressure or anything. Come fall, when people are coming through here, they're gonna more than likely avoid this road, especially during daylight hours. So my suggestion to you is if like you're hunting an area and all of a sudden there's a big road in it like this, what I would do is just plan your hunts based on knowing that the deer are going to avoid that road. It could be advantageous to you. You know, before the deer could kind of roam anywhere. Now they're going to avoid this road, which is right on the top of this ridge. So the deer are going to flank to one side or the other, which creates a shorter window for them to go through, which creates kind of like a mini funnel or a pinch point or like a man-made pinch point for you to hunt out of. So, you know, I guess what I'm saying is don't get down that this stuff happens. Just figure out how to work around it, because the deer can more than likely will still use the area, and it's just understanding how they're going to use it, what trails they're going to use, and then using it to your advantage. And if you can do that and figure it out before other people, I mean, you're sitting in kind of a little gold mine there. All right, cool, first scrape. So this obviously, yeah, this is a scrape. So this catches my attention for a few reasons. Like A, it's just a big dirt hole in the ground, right? But there aren't really like paw prints or scrapings in it, but that could easily be because they just washed away. So what I do is to find that scrape, or what looks to be a scrape, and then I always check the branches and check that out. Like, I mean, like what's more, like you can't find a bigger identifier than these broken branches. You got one there, this one's broken here, this one's broken. Like all these branches are broke, which means this definitely is a scrape. So what I'm gonna do is throw it on my maps, and I always mark every scrape. I always mark every scrape on my maps because I want to look at that from an aerial view. And sometimes, like, you can, if you mark enough scrapes, you go home and you look at it and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, there's a line that runs from here to here, and I bet these bucks hit every scrape on that line. And then you just need to figure out where that line starts, you know, where the bedding area is, and then get to that closest scrape to that bedding area. And that's really helped me be successful, because I've mapped, for instance, I mapped like 6 scrapes one time, and on one end was a thick bedding area and the other end was like an ag field. So I was originally sitting the one closer to the ag field and I wasn't seeing much, but I was getting great camera pictures at night. And once I looked at that and said, oh my gosh, like this looks like a bedding area, it's thick, nasty stuff, I'm gonna set up on the scrape closest to it. Then all of a sudden I started seeing multiple bucks during daylight hours. A lot of them were small, but at the same time I started seeing them rather than not seeing them. So it's a little tip. So one of the questions you may be asking yourself is, if I'm planning on hunting this in the spring, why am I looking for scrapes? I mean, scrapes are hit in October and November, not, you know, mid-September. The reason for that is because scrapes in general are along highly used travel routes. Like that's usually where they are and usually where they're made, because bucks just essentially want to signify that they're here, and they want to put it on a doe travel route to make sure that the does will come across it, understand that that buck's in the area, yada yada yada. You guys know the rest. So that's, I mean, that's the reason a scrape tells me that this area is highly used, and it's more a more productive area for does and bucks alike to come through. So if I can find scrapes, I can find highly used areas, then from there I can understand, you know, where they would go to feed. If they're going up into these hills to munch on some acorns, they're going down here to some ag fields over here. You know, I don't know, but that's what I'm out here to figure out is you know, where they're going and how they're gonna get there, and try to ambush them in between the two. That's That's essentially the name of the game. I would imagine that's a rub, but holy cow. I mean, this dude shredded it from like down on the ground up pretty high. I mean, it's a great rub. Dang. One of the things I always do is when I find a good area like that, I mean, I'm really excited about that area. It's a great spot. I definitely can see myself hunting that in the fall and early season. But I always drop a pin right away on a tree that I think is good, and then I put a little note in there on what wind I can hunt it on. That way, you know, in the fall I come back, everything looks totally different. And I know I can come back in the morning or even in the evening and just know exactly what tree I'm going to. So I'm not wasting my time looking around going, oh man, did I get in that tree? Do I get in that tree? So there are a few, like, how I kind of break out my pieces of public is sorry about the water on the lens, if you guys can see that or not. It is like sleeting, rain, I don't know, it's like 40 some degrees. Perfect temperature for walking. But I kind of break my pieces of public into chunks and areas that I think look good. So we just checked out one of them, and now I walk down that huge hill and I'm walking to another one which is back over here. And I'm just trying to find like the rubs and the scrapes and stuff like that on my way. I don't have a lot of high hopes, but here, I mean, if you can see that at all, there's one right there, a rub right there, rub right there, rub right there, rub right there. There says 6 rubs. Yeah, 6, 7 rubs right in this area. So this is a pretty big trail. So I'm just gonna follow this trail now, like as I go to my other spot. Maybe find a shed, maybe find some scrapes, maybe find some more sign. But this is obviously a well-used trail that bucks travel and mark their territory on. So more than likely is going to be used fairly often. Pretty cool. A lot of these are old, but I mean, they're here. And that's a dandy right there. You know, and you got kind of a really old one right here. Like, that thing's super old. Break out into this nice open field here. Got some more rubs right here too. Pretty slick. I mean, that one, he tried. He really tried for that one. And then there's another one right there. Man, just full of them in here. Another one right here. Some little guys, but still, I mean, rub's a rub, right? There's my favorite. It's a private land boundary right there. Overlooking it all. It's a good spot, man. But knowing that, like that he hunts here every year for gun season, I ain't going over that way. Going back into here. So that's that spot. I'm on to my next one. And one of the problems I'm having is I wanted to find some oak flats, and I did. The problem is there's way too many. I mean, there's a ton of oak trees in here. So I guess the only way I'm going to be able to attack this is when I come in here in the fall, I'm going to need to find some areas that are a bit more kind of open where I can see some good distance and set up in there so that I can get a feel for where the deer are moving. I can try to find some deer. It's almost like a recon stand or a recon sit where you just sit there and you try to understand how the deer are using the area, and then you move in for the kill. So you can do it that way, or you can just go, you know what, I'm gonna try the spot, and if they're there, they're there. If they're not, they're not. You kind of like, you know, either 100% or 0%. I do that pretty often too. It just depends on how many times I'm gonna hunt a piece. If I'm gonna hunt a piece once, twice, maybe 3 times, I'm going all in every single time. I'm just gonna mark out 3 spots. I'm gonna jump in, they're either there, they're there, they're not, they're not. Otherwise, if I'm gonna hunt a spot like, you know, throughout the whole year, I'm gonna take my time and work my way in. It's just kind of a thing that I've developed. And I heard the Hunting Beast talk about it too last season. They did a thing with the hunting public. I don't know if you guys saw that, but check it out for sure. They called it like the public land contest or the public land like hunting. I forget what it is. But anyway, they did that, and that's what like the Hunting Beast said, and that's what ultimately ended up getting a great buck down, was just jumping into a spot and hoping for the best. You know, you just try something every day, going 0 to 100. You're either there or they're not. I'm going up to that point now. It's gonna be a hike. All this stuff is like full of thorns, and that's why nobody else is back in here but I am. I'm dumb enough to be in here. God, these things will just nip you first chance they get, for sure. Gonna be peppered with them later. How am I gonna get down there? I'm kind of stuck in here now. Ow, 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 ow. Ah. Yes. Ah, ha, 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 ha. Woo. It's one of the reasons I try not to follow trails, human trails, because that's where humans go and deer don't always use human trails. Sometimes they do, for the most part they don't. So I followed this kind of real nasty thick deer trail down here, and it led me right to this great scrape. Got broken branches on all these, got some tore up mud right here. I mean, it's everything that I want. It's in a secluded area. No human trails are right around here. There's good trees to hunt out of. I mean, this is kind of everything that I was hoping for I would find. I usually don't find it, to be honest. It's kind of like sheds. Like, you know, you go through all this work and you, oh, I bet there's a shed in that buck bed, and you go in there and it's nasty as hell and you get tore up and you don't find a shed. And usually I don't find a scrape, but found one right here, so that's awesome. And I can drop, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of trees that I can hunt out of in here, so that's sweet. It is gonna be gnarly. Ow. Kind of on my hands and knees crawling through this stuff. At least it's not as spiny as that other stuff. Dang. Kind of nasty. Ow. That was spiny. Yeah. Alright, made it out. Kind of looks like I'm on an old road. Some sort. This is all kind of new growth here. Yeah. So this looks like a buck bed to me. Little buck, but so you got a bed here. It's kind of small. Got some poop in it, right? And you got a rub right next to it. That's like clearly signifies a buck bed 99% of the time. And then also, if you look out, you know, he's looking over this big valley, and if he has the wind coming from his back, he's gonna see everything down below him, and he's gonna smell everything up behind him. This is a cool spot. I think this is a good spot. Oh. I will say this stuff is kind of a bear to walk through. I don't know if like you can tell it that much, but I mean, it is the thick nastiness. I know, like probably bleeding in 30 spots right now just from being pricked. But like the reason I'm in here is because 99% of bow hunters aren't gonna get in here. And if this area gets as pressured like a lot, if I come out here and it's like, oh my God, there's a bow hunter around every corner, I can always fall back into these areas because I'm gonna work a little bit harder, and that's gonna, like, all that pressure is gonna push the deer into these areas where people aren't going. And there's a couple spots back in there that I can set up on. I dropped a few pins, so I mean, if there's a lot of pressure, I can always fall back into here. It sucks now. It's gonna suck worse in the fall when everything's green, but I mean, it gives you chances, gives you opportunity. I'm almost out. Almost out. All right, pretty much out. Made it. So this is just outside that buck bed that I found. Check that out. You know, just rubs galore on all these small little guys. Somebody came in here and was just really upset one day. Huh. Here you go, guys. There is the honey hole right there. Big scrape, big scrape. Look at these branches. I mean, You gotta be kidding me. So we are now, like, branch broke, branch broke, branch broke, branch broke, branch broke. Look at that. I mean, this is a giant scrape right here. This is a homing beacon for a lot of deer, a lot of big bucks. And this stuff also is the spot I'm about 1.5 miles back. I wasn't finding any of this in other areas of this property, and now that I'm really far back here and there's no access besides just putting on the miles, this is where you're gonna find this sign. I mean, like, I'm surprised that it took this long to find it, but I'm not surprised that it was found. That's a tank of a scrape. I mean, if it wasn't on this field edge, like right out here in the middle of nowhere, or in the middle of this field, I guess, like like, I would love to put a trail camera on here, but I can't, or I don't want to, because I'm just afraid that other people will come along and other people have to know this scrape exists, and they'll find my camera and then more than likely steal the card. If they don't steal the card, break the camera. If they don't break the camera, they'll steal the camera. So, but finding that scrape, huge. Dropping it on my maps right now. Gonna do that real quick, and then find a tree to hunt out of, because I mean, it's a good spot. Got another huge scrape back here. Branches are broke. I mean, clearly a scrape. Here's another one. Here's another one. Here's another one. I mean, holy cow. Just all right here. That's awesome. They're in here, man. They are in here. So I just walked one side of that field, and then I came back, and now I'm walking the other side. And sometimes it's interesting to me, just like what you don't find, you know. So that other side over there, I found a bunch of rubs, a bunch of scrapes, a bunch of trails. Like, everything over there was like, oh my God, like, come hunt me, pretty much. This side, practically nothing until I got to this one tree. And even there, there's just a small rub and a scrape or two. So, and they're pretty small scrapes, and then, like, yeah. So it's just, there just isn't much on this side of the woods and on this side of this field. I'm not entirely sure why. It's got to deal with the terrain, the private public land boundaries right here as well. So maybe the private land just isn't that great over there or something. But always keep that in mind too. It's just, if you don't find anything, I don't hunt there. Like, there's plenty of public acres. People say there's not a lot of public land. You just got to find it, and you just got to travel, to be honest. Like, that's my opinion. In Wisconsin, there really isn't, like, quote unquote that much, but there is. I mean, there's a ton of public land to go. So just go find those spots that are good. If you're in an area and you're not finding good sign, you know, maybe you got to drive an extra 20-30 minutes to find an area that does have good sign. That's just my thoughts. I mean, to this morning I drove 2 hours to get here, so it's not like I'm hunting out my back door anyway. Where did all the sign go? It's all right. It limits it to one area, and then I just have to hunt that one area. Well, I'm pretty much done. I've kind of hit my time limit here. I just gotta scoot out. I got about a mile walk, and I'm just gonna truck it right through. So thanks for watching. Appreciate it. If you found anything useful, hook me up with a thumbs up, give me a subscribe, really appreciate it, or give me a follow if you're watching this on Instagram. Just trying to, my general overall thoughts is to try to help people become more successful, because then people will stay hunting more, which will grow our hunting community and make our hunting community stronger. A lot of people are jumping on the clean food movement. I am 100% for that. You know, I eat every single deer that I kill, and I try to eat every single part of that animal that I can. But at the same time, I always love just getting out here, wandering around, and kind of sharing my insight. I do a lot of this walking. I'm not God's gift to deer hunting by any means, but I mean, last year I sat about 40 times, and I spent about roughly 300 or so hours in the woods. So I mean, I spend a lot of time out in the woods and doing stuff a lot more than most people who are just weekend warriors. And there's nothing wrong with that by any means. I just try to get out more and I dedicate a lot more time to it. And you know, this morning I got up at 5 a.m. to get out here. So, so anyway, appreciate the views, appreciate the follows, appreciate the subscribes. Thank you very much. And if I find anything on the way, I'll let you know. Catch you guys later.